Hello, boys and girls, and welcome to another episode of Movie Goodness, where we examine life through cinema here on the KB Radio Network. I am your host, Kevin Reed. And what do you want to talk about today? Well, it's a no-brainer. It really, it's a no-brainer on what today's topic will be. It is, of course, the brawl for it all that took place in Montgomery, Alabama on Saturday, August the 5th. And it was epic, man. It was epic because I didn't see the video until Sunday, which a lot of people saw. And I was in awe. I was in complete shock of what was taking place. I'm like, wait, is this real? Actually, when I built up the nerve to actually watch the whole video in its totality, then I was in shock because initially I wasn't going to watch it because it starts off, at least the version that I saw, multiple versions have been released since then, and with different angles, and it had more camera angles than a production of a television show on TV. This had multiple camera angles. But anyway, I saw uh, the opening of it. This black man being jumped by a group of white people, and I was like, look, I don't want to see this. And I clicked off it. Yeah, I clicked off. I didn't watch it. And as I was going through social media and looking at some posts, see what's popping on Twitter or X, whatever it is today, and that video just kept popping up. I'm like, why is everybody infatuated with this video? And so I finally sat down and watched the whole thing, and I was wait, did that dude jump in the water? Wait, he's swimming? He's swimming over there? And then you see the other people come to help out. And I'm like, okay, all right, finally. People put down their phones and actually helping in a situation. Well, some people are putting down their phones. Otherwise, we wouldn't have got to see. But I was proud. I was like, all right, finally. And then the video kept going. I'm like, wait, there's more? And all manners of insane chaos just broke loose. And I was, whoa, whoa, they really going ham on these people with this boat. Like I said, I'm just clicking on the video, not knowing what the story is, what's the reason behind all this, why they jumped the black man in the first place, and for this security guard to throw up his hat like it was the bat signal and signal that he needs help. I guess that was the signal. Now I know. Now if I see somebody throw up their hat, I know I need to come help. And so it was amazing. It was simply amazing to see this type of response. And I'm so happy for it. Now, mind you, I'm not an advocate for violence. I'm not cheering on the violent nature of everything that took place, but you also have to understand, after years, centuries even, of pent up aggression, this was bound to happen. This was bound to happen. Enough was enough. It can't. This is movie goodness, so I'm gonna give you a movie quote from Clint Eastwood in his portrayal of Dirty Harry. I think it was Dirty Harry, when he uttered the line, "Every man has his breaking point," and they just, enough was enough. They got tired of white privilege. They got tired. It was old. We tired, and I get it. I 100% get it, and for all of the videos that were created, all the TikToks and all this here that was created off of this incident, and to see a majority of people, at least on my little algorithm, cheering is on. And I'm talking white folks now. Who was cheering is on. Understanding the nature of all of this is even more amazing. Now, of course, there were some that were mad. There were some that were like, oh, this was unnecessary and all this here, especially concerning old boy with the chair that just he just laid out everybody with the chair. I've seen a few videos where people were upset about that. And my reaction to this, was it excessive? Yeah, it was a tad bit. It was a tad bit obsessive, especially when he hit the one. I'll be glad when he hit the woman who was on the ground with the chair. All right, cool. And he went a little too hard. But when your adrenaline's pumping and you see red, you don't care. You just swing. But no excuse. That was kind of, he went a little too far there. But with that being said, for the people upset about that, why are you not upset about the cause of it all? What started this all? I haven't heard out of the ones who are complaining of what the black people did. I haven't heard them say anything about what the white people did to start the whole fiasco. They don't jump on that black dude. They listen to the dude he tells them to move their boat. That was where it all started. Move your boat so this ship can dock. They refused. White privilege. They refused and walked off on the man. I guess, who knows what they said. I'm pretty sure an N-word was dropped. I'm more than certain it was. If not, some variation of it. And so they walks off. They pushed the boat out the way. They're like, okay, no problem. They pushed the boat out the way. That's what got the white folks mad. And that he touched their boat and jumped the man. And hey, like simple physics. For every action, there's an equal or greater reaction. And that's what happened. They faced the consequences of their actions. No, I feel sorry for none of them, including the woman. I have no sympathy for him. Because look what you did. You could have killed that man. Honestly, it was 8-on-1. 8-on-1. And that includes the women. They had, 3 women that was throwing punches too. So, no. Sympathy is out the window with me. But we're gonna run down this story and touch in on a couple of facts about Montgomery, Alabama, and its history, and why it rose to this point, how it rose to this point, should I say. And it could have been worse. And some can make the argument it should have been worse. But I'm glad nobody was, quote unquote, hurt, like seriously hurt or even killed. But it could have been worse. But anyway, the film we're going to review today in honor of this uprising, I guess you can say, is a film from 2016 directed by Nate Parker, and it is Birth of a Nation. And I think it's fitting to review that film. So I'm going to give a kind of up-to-date version to at least the time of this recording on the incident, and we're going to go over an article that is on CNN.com that kind of lays out everything that I wanted to talk about today. So things may change at the time of this episode's release. So don't gain up and jump me for that. Like I said, we all saw the video. If you haven't, you've probably been on Mars for the past week. But it was a chaotic brawl that took place in Montgomery, Alabama's riverfront. And it opened up a new discussion, or should I say it renewed a national conversation about racial tension in this country. A fight between a group of white boaters and a black co-captain of a riverboat escalated into a melee this past Saturday on August the 5th, where a group of bystanders joined the fray. On Tuesday, Montgomery, Alabama Police Chief Darrell Albert said arrest warrants have been issued for 3 men included in the altercation. Investigators looked into whether there was enough evidence to charge for a hate crime or inciting a riot, but the actions did not meet the criteria, the police chief said. He also went on to say, and I quote, "We are unable to present any inciting a riot or racially biased charges at this time," he said during a news conference he conducted on Tuesday. But that news hasn't stopped some from speculating about the motivations behind a fight that appeared bitterly divided on race. On social media, images of the brawl quickly became a meme, as some viewers praised the black bystanders who rushed in and swam in to the co-captain's defense. But jokes and memes aside, historians have noted that the altercation has once again placed Montgomery at the center of conversation around race. Here is a look at Montgomery's storied racial history. In downtown Montgomery, not far from where the brawl took place, a historical mark commemorates the city's role in the transatlantic slave trade. Joseph R. Rothman, a historian and chair of the Department of History at the University of Alabama, told CNN the state played a substantial role in the domestic slave trade until the Civil War, of course. In the mid 1800s, thousands of enslaved people were transported by steamboats and railroads from New Orleans, shout out, I guess, up the Alabama River to Montgomery, according to the Montgomery-based Equal Justice Initiative. Many of the rail routes had been constructed by slave labor. Enslaved people would arrive in Montgomery's riverfront or at the train station, where they would be chained together and paraded down Commerce Street. They would later be sold in the city's slave markets. By 1860, there were more than 435,000 enslaved people in the state, according to the Equal Justice Initiative. By the start of the Civil War, a year later, Montgomery was among the most prominent slave trading communities in the state. Slavery's impact could be seen from everywhere, Routman said in an email that he sent to CNN. He added that enslaved labor fueled the local economy and influenced everything from the political order to religious life. He went on to state in a quote, if you scratch hard enough at the surface of any of these matters and many others today, you'll likely find the legacy of slavery lying somewhere underneath. Montgomery is often called the cradle of the Confederacy because in 1861, it briefly served as the first capital of the Confederate States of America. 11 states had seceded from the Union after Abraham Lincoln was elected president of the United States in 1860. Delegates from 6 of those states, South Carolina, Mississippi, Alabama, Florida, Georgia, and Louisiana, shout out, I guess, converged in Montgomery in February of 1861 to officially establish their own government. In May of 1861, the Confederate government moved from Montgomery to Richmond, Virginia, which remained the capital of the Confederacy until the end of the Civil War. Fast forwarding about 100 years later, Montgomery was ground zero for protests during the Civil Rights Movement. The Montgomery bus boycott drew national attention because it was the first major protest against segregation. The boycott started after Rosa Parks was arrested in Montgomery for refusing to give up her bus seat to a white man on December 1st, 1955. At the time, Alabama law required black people to give up their seat to white people if the bus was full. In response to Rosa Parks' arrest, black Americans refused to ride the city buses in an effort to force an end to segregation or segregated seating. In November of 1956, the United States Supreme Court struck down laws that mandated segregated seating on buses. Montgomery also played a pivotal role in the Selma March. On March 7th, 1965, hundreds of people marched from Selma, Alabama to Montgomery to demonstrate the fight for equal voting rights for black Americans. But on the Edmund Pettus Bridge in Selma, the march turned violent when state troopers attacked the marchers, leaving many injured. The protest, later dubbed Bloody Sunday, sparked national outrage and ultimately led to the passage of the Voting Rights Act in August of 1965. Fast forwarding again to April of 2018, the National Memorial for Peace and Justice, a museum honoring lynching victims and the enslaved, was opened in Montgomery, a solemn reminder of the horrors of slavery in the city. The Legacy Museum is located on the site of a former warehouse where black people were bought and sold into slavery. In 2019, 54 years after Bloody Sunday, Montgomery elected its first black mayor, Stephen Reed, no relation. Moving back to this past week in the Alabama Slam, we have 3 arrest warrants that were issued out. Richard Roberts, who is 48 years old, was charged with 2 counts of third-degree assault, and Alan Todd, who is 23 years old, and Zachary Shipman, who is 25, were each charged with 1 such count. Police Chief Albert said. The chief described the 3 as white men who were connected to the private boat. One of these men has surrendered and is in custody, and the 2 others are expected to be in custody soon. Pretty sure by the time of this episode's release, they will all be in custody. At least that's my guess. Third-degree assault is considered a Class A misdemeanor in Alabama and is punishable by up to a year in prison. The fight largely broke down along racial lines in the city with just a history of racial violence that we went over, just a tad bit that we did go over. Investigators are looking into whether there's enough evidence to charge for the hate crime. As I said earlier, they're still looking into that. The victims of the assault were identified as Damian Pickett, the black co-captain of the riverboat, and a 16-year-old white man. Police also asked that a black man who was seen in the video swinging a folded chair contact them for further questioning. Look, as I said before, I don't advocate violence. I don't champion that. I don't cheer it on. I don't make a big thing out of cheering on violence. But my God, man, you can't tell me that wasn't the funniest thing you ever saw in your life. I mean, this dude went ham with that chair, and I honestly knew for a fact they were going to arrest that dude. And the fact that he hasn't been is a shock to me. It's a shock to me, because he was trying to do harm with that chair. But look, I hope he do contact him. Like I said, by the time this episode is released, maybe he had given his side of the story or whatever. I don't know. But as of right now, he hasn't been apprehended. The Alabama Law Enforcement Agency, Montgomery County District Attorney's Office, and the local office of the FBI were all consulted on the charges, according to Albert. In all, 13 people were detained and questioned for several hours on Saturday before being released, the chief said. The chief said the investigation is ongoing and more charges are likely. He went on to say in his press conference on Tuesday, we want to ensure that the public understands that we put everything that we had into making sure that the right charges were presented and that those folks who face these appropriate charges end their day in court. The chief's press conference provided further details on the fight that have been widely shared on social media in the past few days. This is his layout of what took place on Saturday. The incident began at around 7 p.m. Saturday when the Harriet II riverboat carrying 227 passengers attempted to dock in its designated and reserved spot along the waterfront. But a private boat was docked in its space, and the boat's owner respond to the request to move with obscene gestures, curse words, and taunts, the chief said. Pickett, the co-captain, was picked up from the riverboat by another vessel and brought to the dock to try to have a conversation with the boat owners and get them to move, Albert said in his press conference. There, the boat owners confronted the captain in a very hostile manner and then attacked him, as the video shows. As the co-captain approached the dock and attempted a peaceful move of the boat over just enough so the Harriet could park, the owners of the boat confronted him in a very hostile manner. There were words exchanged, and then it turned into a fist encounter. The co-captain was doing his job, police chief Albert said. The fight was brought on by reckless individuals who do not use good judgment and caused an event that certainly was avoidable, Mayor Stephen Reed said. No relation. That said, the police department react very swiftly and very intentionally to address the matter, as did other citizens in the community. One of the many witnesses aboard the riverboat told CNN that they had waited for about 30 to 45 minutes for the small boat's owners to come and move it, but nobody came forward. She said an employee eventually went over to a small boat and started untying the vessel, and a man who appeared to be white ran over. Video of the altercation shows the employee and a group of white men got into a heated discussion. After several minutes, a shirtless white man charged and shoved the employee. He flung his hat in the air. He flung his hat in the air. I don't know why. I'm telling you, that was the bat signal, people. That was the signal. And as the footage shows, the shirtless man then threw several more punches, and a group of several other white people knocked the worker to the ground and started hitting him. The footage shows, in addition, a young white man wearing a life jacket came over to the scene and was struck by one of the shirtless white men, the video shows. The fight escalated further, with other groups of people entering the fray, and a person aboard the boat jumped in the water and swam towards the fight, as once again the video shows, who is being the black Aquaman. At one point, a black man attacked two others with a folding chair as if competing in the World Wrestling Entertainment. Before he was detained by police, the footage shows. Another person was knocked off of the dock into the water. Oh, God. Montgomery police said they were called to the scene and found a large group of subjects engaged in a physical altercation, according to the Monday news release. Clayton Thompson, who has worked as a singer and entertainer on the riverboat for 12 years, said Saturday's fight was disappointing. This is a quote from Clayton. We kept asking them to move the boat. I even made up a song during these 30 and 45 minutes. Move your boat, he said. All they did was shoot birds, shout profanities. It's obvious that all they wanted to do was cause a ruckus. Keith Boykin, who is a New York Times best-selling author and he's also a political commentator, he tweeted about the incident. And this was his tweet. What happened in Alabama over the weekend didn't start on that dock in Montgomery. It was the cumulative impact of hundreds of years of racial oppression bubbling back to the surface after yet another incident of white privilege disrespecting black bodies. In closing, I would say, as comical as it was, as much joy I got out of watching that video, you got to look at the total package here, as it was beautifully put by Keith Bowman. This is kind of a breaking point for the black community. You know, you can only hammer or keep your foot on the neck of an individual, or in this case, an entire community, for so long before they say enough's enough. You know, enough's enough. Dealing with white privilege and growing up in the South, trust me, I know it truly does exist. And I see it every day. I see it every day. And it is infuriating. And to see that these individuals, these people come to the aid of another black man who was in need and overpowered their white oppressors, so to speak, it brought me joy. And it brought a lot of people joy. Yeah, despite the fact it was comical, but it was and comical in the sense of these people bit off more than they can chew. You know, it wasn't no fun when that rabbit had the gut. Now, when they jumped on this man, it was 8-on-1. 8-on-1. And then the odds turned into black folks' favor. You know, and this normally doesn't happen. And we've seen it time and time again. Yeah, we'll pull out phones. We'll video until our face turns blue. But go help? No. It was no such thing as help, you know. Oh, that don't have nothing to do with me, so I'm a go on by my business. You turn the other cheek, so to speak. But not here. Not here. And I'm glad it finally happened. It finally happened. Enough's enough. And coincidentally, I think a lot of this comes from that stupid country song. Try That in a Small Town by Jason Aldean. You know, that song, it's a huge hit. It's a big hit, and it is a racially fueled song. Here's a couple of lyrics from the song. Here's the chorus. Try that in a small town. See how far you make it down the road. Around here, we take care of our own. You cross that line, it won't take long. For you will find out. I recommend you don't. Try that in a small town full of good old boys raised up right. If you're looking for a fight, try that in a small town. And I think these people were probably bumping that in their iPods or their little Beats headphones and getting bucked up. So the song then gassed them up to go out there and take them chair shots. So hey, did you know, life don't always imitate art. So you can't allow a song to have you put you out there like that, bro. Because Jason Aldean was nowhere to be found. He couldn't help you in this sense. You needed Jesus. I mean, say, bro, I have never seen a butt whooping like that in a long, long time. I mean, it was a thing of beauty. I'm sorry. That was a thing of beauty. Oh my God. And they deserved every single shot. It wasn't like I said earlier, yeah, it was a tad bit excessive with the chair. But I get it. I get it. You know, them people, they thought they thought they owned the town. They thought that that's the way they act. Bro, that is white privilege. If you don't know what white privilege is, or you blind to it, or you just simply dumb to the whole concept of white privilege, that's white privilege. The man told, first and foremost, they parked the boat there, knowing good and well they're not supposed to. And then when they were told not to, who are you? Who are you? Get out of my face. You know, whatever they were saying. Like I said earlier, I'm pretty sure there was racially fueled language in there. And so, yeah, and just walked off on the man. So, all right, no problem. He moved the boat. He moved the boat. He did everything right. He was doing his job. And as I wrap up this story, I'm often reminded to a time on my job years ago when a guy, he no longer works at the job I work at, and it was one of these police shootings, and shooting an unarmed black man, of course. And his words, of course, he was white. His words were, "Well, comply, comply, comply." He didn't comply. You know, you don't comply. This the consequences of that, and blah blah blah. Okay, okay. You know, them white folks should have complied. That's why every chair shot they got, that's the consequences for that. And so that's the story of the brawl for it all in Montgomery, Alabama, on the riverfront. Uh, that was amazing, man. That was amazing. I hope and pray that this incident inspires the black community to stand up for what's right. I'm not saying go around with folding chairs and you know, like it's walking tall. I'm just saying standing up for what's right. That's all I'm gonna say. I'm not saying pick fights and all this other foolishness. But it is great to see the community come together and take a stand. But there's even more to this. A Facebook post shared by a relative of the white family involved in the Montgomery Riverfront Brawl has triggered outrage as the context of the message appeared to be rooted in white supremacy. It has since been deleted, but the post came from a nephew of the white woman who was struck with the chair. Now, the guy who posted this Facebook message, whose name is Richard Newton, in case you was wondering, he posted, "The guy hit my auntie with that chair while pressing charges on Monday. We want a fairly fade this weekend on the boat." And it came along with a picture of Edward Norton, who played that white supremacist in American History X. So that picture was on the post. So he deleted it, but before he could delete it, another Facebook user whose name is Harold Henderson posted a screenshot of the message. The seemingly threatened post outraged many on social media, prompting one user to comment, and I quote, "Not asking for another beating." The post comes in the wake of the fight that broke out between several white individuals and a single black man, identified as an on-duty dock worker. And the fight started after the dock worker asked the white individuals who had docked a platoon to move so the riverboat can be docked in its place. And so, yeah. So, in another report, after the family had got mollywopped, they went to the hospital to treat their injuries, of course. And so while they were there at the hospital, they were being attended to by this nurse who happened to be black. And they looked around, and there was quite a few black nurses and doctors. Yeah, they do exist, people. And this triggered this triggered the white people who was involved in the brawl. It triggered them so much they called the police and basically said they didn't want black folks. And I'm giving the G-rated version because they used the actual N-word on the phone. They didn't want them treating them. So the police come out to the hospital and tells them either you get treated or leave. They chose to leave. And so this lets you know that they are straight up racist. There is this wasn't an isolated incident that took place on that dock. This is who they are. They don't care for black folks. And so for everyone out there feeling sorry, feeling sorry for these white folks for getting mollywopped on that dock, keep that in mind. Keep that in mind, or keep this in mind. And that when you sitting there defending them, this is who they are. This is who they are. And they felt they were better than us. And they felt nobody can tell them nothing, especially a black dude. Who are you? So he showed them who he was, along with every other black person on that dock. Well, not every black person, but the majority of the black people, and especially Cat Daddy with the chair. And he let them know who we were. And so there you have it. And so that's the story of the battle in Bama, the the brawl for it all, the Montgomery Riverfront Brawl. This is crazy. I'm telling you, that made my week. Hearing when I first saw this, incredible. But in any event, let's get into our review. Let's talk about a film that under any normal circumstances I wouldn't have reviewed. Not because I didn't like the film. It was just I made a promise to myself that I was going to stay away from slave movies. Not because I don't like them or they're bad or they're poorly made. They're triggering for me. I don't like seeing it. That's like showing a Jewish person Schindler's List or something like that. I'm pretty sure they'll watch it. Pretty sure they probably enjoy it, but they wouldn't want to keep watching a Holocaust movie. You know what I'm saying? It's hard. And it's hard for me to watch these type of films. Even films that set around the civil rights movement in the 50s and the 60s. It's hard for me to watch those. And I had told myself that I was going to try to stay away from films like this as much as I can. But in this particular circumstance, and discussing the topic that we're discussing today, this is the first film that popped in my mind. And it fits. It fits the topic, whether I like it or not. So it is The Birth of a Nation. And The Birth of a Nation initially kind of threw me off when I first saw it in 2016. Because I remember the 1915 film, which was a KKK silent film called The Birth of a Nation. And it was propaganda for the KKK. And so to flip it on his head and make this film and call it The Birth of a Nation 100 years almost to the day later is kind of crazy to me. And initially I wasn't going to go see it in the theaters, but I had went on a trip, and I think to Texas. Well, yeah, it was to Texas because I went to see this movie with my niece and her boyfriend, and we went to the theater, sat down, and watched it, and I enjoyed the film, and I really liked the film a lot. And when I left the theater, we were talking, and I was like, well, I don't have to see this ever again. And that was the last time I watched it. Yes, I'm reviewing a film that I haven't seen since 2016. but I remember every element of that film. It sticks with you. It is a hard watch. The Birth of a Nation is written, directed, and stars Nate Parker in his directorial debut, and is based on the story of Nat Turner, an enslaved man who leads a slave rebellion in Southampton County, Virginia in 1831. The film stars, as I said, Nate Parker as Nat Turner, with Armie Hammer, Mark Boone Jr., Coleman Diego, Dwight Henry, Esther Scott, Roger Smith, Gabrielle Union, Penelope Ann Miller, and Jackie Earl Haley in supporting roles. Nate Parker had petitioned financiers to invest in the film, and he ended up getting $8.5 million for the budget, and he started filming this film in 2015 in Georgia. And this movie was brutal to watch because of of course, the slaves and the treatment of the slaves and the religious aspects of it. Nat Turner was a preacher. You know, he was one of the rare slaves who could read, and he read his Bible. He had basic skills, and he was basically just reading the Bible. That was the only access to reading that he had, you know. And he would read scriptures during church gatherings and whatnot, and his slave masters would use him to convince the other slaves to get in line, so to speak. You know, when they didn't want to do certain things, or they were trying to eat, you know, didn't want to eat on a little strike or whatever. That was a hard scene to watch. That when one of the slaves refused to eat, he refused to eat, so the slave master will force him. He had his helpmates hold him down and try to force him to eat, but the guy will hold his mouth shut, you know, clench his teeth. So what the slave master would do was break his teeth, literally just pull his teeth out as he was, you know, clenching down on him, and it was brutal to watch. So they can force food down his throat. I'm like, Jesus, just let me starve to death, you know. But this wasn't made up for movies, folks. This is what took place during slavery, and it was brutal. But what made it so bad is what the slave master would bring Nat Turner in to talk to him, to read scripture to him. It was basically using the Bible against the slaves. And you know, that main scripture where it say slaves obey your master or whatever. And it was brutal, and the heartbreak on that slave when Nat was talking to him and trying to convince him to just go ahead and do it or whatever. It was, oh my God, bro. And he would do this on different plantations. You know, the slave owners would pass him around, you know, to quote unquote get their slaves in line. You know, he'll go to plantation to plantation and do this. And eventually enough was enough for him. It was enough. And he planned a revolt against the slave owners. And it was one of the biggest slave revolts in American history. Even though it failed, they did not succeed in their revolt. And going by the film's depiction, one of the slaves sold him out. It sold him out and got him pretty much slaughtered. And the only one to escape was Nat Turner, who later on surrendered and was hung. And it was a heartfelt ending to that film, because as he was about to get hung, he looked out in the crowd and he saw that slave boy that sold him out. And instead of getting mad or whatever, I guess you could say he turned the other cheek, and he kind of smirked at him, you know, and they hung him. And it was just, it's a heart wrenching film, and it needed to be. You know, it needed to be. Half the time, and this is another reason why I don't like jumping into slave films to review. You always get the white savior, you know, the white character on the white horse that comes in and saves the day. And I'm pretty sure it did happen, but it didn't happen all the time. You know, as films like to depict. Um, this didn't have that. This was a real slave movie, and it was probably one of the most accurate depictions of slavery I've seen in film. That's why this was the hardest film to watch, and why I haven't went back to it. Not to come off as blasphemous, but I compare this to Passion of the Christ. I cannot watch Passion of the Christ again. I've seen it twice in my life, and both times I had to stop the movie and compose myself. Well, no, I stopped it at home. The crazy part, when I went to see Passion of the Christ in the theaters, the theater stopped. And the reason they stopped the film, everybody in the theater was crying at a certain scene. And we know the scene. And everybody was just breaking down crying. And they stopped the movie, you know, for people to get their composure back. And once everybody kind of settled, they continued on with the film. I did it at home, and the reason I watched it at home, I wanted my daughters to see it, and so we watched it one Easter Sunday, and it was hard. And once again, we had to stop it because we were all bawling, crying. And, so once I got through it that time, I said, I'm good. I'm good. I get it. And it's the same thing here. This was a very, very hard watch. Very hard watch, but a beautifully, beautifully made film. Nate Parker, who portrays Nat Turner, did an excellent job as far as his acting is concerned. He did a real good job. Armie Hammer, who is persona non grata, I know now, but he did an awesome job as well as one of the slavers. He actually was the slave owner who owned Nat, and that's who Nat killed to start the revolt. And I loved his character. All the other actors here did an excellent job as well. The direction was great by Nat Parker. I keep saying Nat neat is hard when doing this, but Nate Parker. Now I'm about to say Turner. Nate Parker, direction is outstanding. He did an excellent job. It was paced well. It was written well. It was a dark film. It wasn't any bright moments. The tone wasn't bubbly at areas here and all this. No, this was a dark film, and it needed to be. It needed to be. There was nothing bubbly about this. There was nothing exciting about this. This was supposed to depict the darkest moment in this country's history, and that's precisely what this film did. The reason this film did not get any awards consideration, any box office returns of any merit, was because of Nate Parker. Nate Parker, when this film was about to be released, allegations of rape came up. And this stems from years prior to this. I think in 2005, this took place. But it came up around the time of this film's release, which puts a black eye not only on Nate Parker, but on the film that he's directing, starring, and written. And so with all that coming out, and now, granted, he was acquitted of all the charges. That's why I'm saying accusations. Nothing was proven in court. But by the time of this film's release, the damage was done. It was over. It just torpedoed this film, and for the most part, torpedoed his career. You don't hear from Nate Parker no more. I think I seen him in another film a couple of years ago that he popped up in, but it was a small movie. But other than that, I don't see him no more. And it is really, really disappointing because I like him as an actor. I don't know much about the rape case. Like I said, he was acquitted. So I'm going to go off the fact that he was innocent. But I don't know what took place and what type of person he is in his personal life. But as far as an actor, as a director, I think he did an excellent job here. This was a really, really excellent film. I think if these accusations don't come out, this was hands down an Academy Award darling. I could have seen him for Best Director. Best Picture, I don't think it was Best Picture quality, but it definitely for its writing and maybe a cinematography. But yeah, it really buried this movie, those accusations. So I don't know. It's disappointing, but at the same time, it is what it is. You know, you can't put it back in the bottle. But as a film, The Birth of a Nation is a real educational film, well directed film, well acted film, and I think it's probably one of the best slave films in recent memory, if that can be if that can be a category. But yeah, it's still a film that I don't see myself revisiting for a number of reasons. It's so good I don't want to watch it no more. That's that's how authentic it is as a film. But The Birth of a Nation, which came out in 2016, directed by Nate Parker or Mr. Parker, gets a letter grade of a B plus. Really, really good film. It's an educational film. I do recommend, if you haven't seen it, to check it out. I don't know where you can find it at, but check it out. It's worth a watch. It's worth a watch. It's a good movie. It's really, really good. It's just painful for me to watch. That's all. You know, that's just me. You may watch it. You might want to put it back on for another go around. I don't know. I mean, it is what it is. But I do highly recommend it. Really great film. I wish that Nate Parker's career wouldn't nosedive, you know, after this, because I could see him in charge of a lot of projects that have came out in the past 10 years that I can clearly see him being the helm of and doing an excellent job of. And so I hope it all clears up and he can get back on track and do what he was meant to do, and that is make movies. So yes, Birth of a Nation. And the reason I'm linking this with our story is because of the revolt, the slave revolt. And it felt like a revolt that took place in Montgomery and on that riverboat dock. I mean, black folks rose to the occasion on August the 5th. That was something to marvel at. It really was, man. But it also shines a light on this country as a whole, because these people are so racist. You know, you couldn't even beat the racists out of them. They still still were defiant. They still are defiant to this day. Instead of looking back at their actions, like, man, maybe I need to reevaluate this thing. I mean, because we got mollywop. we got the snap beat out of us, man. And maybe we ought to look at this differently, you know. But no, not them. Nah. The next time, this is my fear. The next time this comes around, because it's gonna happen again. You know, it may not be in Montgomery. It may be here where I live. It may be where you live. This is gonna happen again. But this go around, there may be weapons involved that is not a chair. It may be something you can pull out and shoot. So that is my fear when this comes around again. And God help us all when that happens, because it's liable to be a civil war. I'm telling you, and to all my Caucasian listeners out there, if you're still listening, hear me out and hear me clear. Black folks have reached their breaking point. They're at their boiling point. They have reached it. We're miles past the limit. I think black folks have had enough. And all black folks just want to be left alone. Just leave us alone. Just leave us alone. You do your thing, we do our thing. Leave us alone. You're not going to help us. You don't want to listen to us. Just leave us alone then. Just leave us alone. Because now, when you poke the bear gonna bite back. And it's enough. Enough is enough. And this isn't a threat. I'm not making threats. I'm just telling you, check the climate. Check the climate, people. People have reached their boiling point. I'm telling you, it's real. I'm saying this to try to help everybody. Because I don't want to see nobody get hurt. I don't want to see nobody get murdered. I don't want to see it. And so that's the reason I'm saying this. It's not to issue a threat. I'm coming from a place of love, believe it or not. And so there you have it. But that's the show. What do you feel about this Montgomery Riverfront Brawl? Did you find it funny? Did you find it disgusting? Did you feel it was about time? I would like to know your opinion. Email the show, kbradiopodcast@gmail.com. You can also look me up on all social media platforms. Just look up the KB Radio Network. You can also find the KB Radio Network channel on YouTube. Subscribe to the channel and give this video a like if you don't mind. Also, don't forget about the 5 stars, the reviews, and sharing this show if you're listening on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, wherever you are currently listening to movie goodness here on the KB Radio Network. Everybody, thank you for joining me for today's show. For all my returning listeners, thank you for your continued support of the show. And if you're new to the show, welcome. I pray that I said something today that will make you subscribe to this podcast and continue to listen to the KB Radio Network. Everybody, I want you all to know that I love you. Continue to love one another. And until we speak again, you all be blessed.